Alright everyone, welcome to part 2 of how Britain's formerly hopeful party of idealists sold out and told the rest of us to do one. Last time we were stuck with fucking useless Neil Kinnock in 1987, who was having a hard time appealing to the unimpressed and high on Thatcher electorate. But change was coming. Not necessarily good change, but enough change to satisfy a few of us smelly serfs. In this video, I'll cover how an ideological shift, a sudden death, and a war ultimately left Labour as the sad, mediocre, snivelling husk they are today. Despite losing pretty badly, the party gave Kinnock's methods of moderation another chance. That entailed dancing between not supporting the unions, at the same time as not supporting Thatcher, at the same time as not agreeing with the Liberals, who had rebranded into the SDP in 1981 to try and cash in on the more moderate voter base. Labour continued to regrow some of its old popularity with the British public, as their iron-hard link with the disgraced trade unions slowly whittled away, like the dignity in a uni student's eyes as he realises he spent 2 days writing a script about politics. Meanwhile, the influence of the far left of the Labour Party under the ad hoc leadership of Tony Benn, world's poshest socialist, dwindled. As inflation began to rise and Britain experienced an increasingly unsustainable stock boom, by 1990 the HMS Thatcher was beginning to sink. Her interesting approach of bullying her entire cabinet was starting to take its toll, as a slew of resignations of Tory neeks began to spring leaks in the Conservative ship.
Lawson! Now look here! What have you done with my pound? I thought you told me to phase it out, your loveliness.
The pound note, you pillock, not the pound sterling!
Oh, that and the poll tax. I can't be asked to explain what it is right here, but just trust me and ask your parents, then judge their views based on how much steam comes out of their ears. In November that year, Thatcher was gone, and she was replaced by this guy, John Major, who one of my mates has a disturbing affinity for.
John. What's there to say about John? He was truly the best of us. He was the greatest of prime ministers. His work was amazing. He basically solved the crisis in Ireland, but he doesn't get the credit for that. He did amazing in Yugoslavia, but he doesn't get credit for that. Made ignoring Black Friday, which was a minor blip, he got the economy into a state that was amazing and was able to help Blair immensely during his reforms. He got us into the European Union for his blood, sweat and tears, and he was just a general Chad.
The 1992 election was coming up, and Kinnock assumed that he had it in the bag. Thatcher was disgraced, Major was seen as boring, and the economy was a bit shit. Labour ran a very overconfident presidential campaign, the sort that had been a staple of the previous 3 Conservative wins. Here's some clips of Kinnock being a jumped-up twerp.
We're all right! By the feeling that we won't get a majority is wrong. We will get a majority.
You have your own views about PR at Westminster, don't you?
I do.
Would you tell us what those views are?
No, I won't.
In the end, John won the election, because even 13 years after the winter of discontent, the public still couldn't quite trust old Grinny Neil. No, they needed someone with an even bigger grin, and, preferably, more hair. The atmosphere after 92 was gloomy for Labour, and Neil was cast away after 9 years as leader. He was swapped out for another John from the John factory, this one being a Smith model. Smith copied other John's big weird glasses, but didn't copy his accidental losing of £3.4 billion in September 1992, an incident known as Black Wednesday. This event finally cracked the illusion of Tory economic responsibility, and Major shoved Mr. Eyebrows here onto the bus that was the British press. This ploy didn't work, and for the following years Labour was able to capitalise on that blunder, slowly poking holes in the Tories' credibility. Smith was a pretty reliable looking pair of hands, and everything seemed like 97 would be the year that Britain would give Labour another chance. Unfortunately, possible future PM Smith, well, died. In 1994 he suffered a heart attack and left the world respected and liked by both sides of the political aisle, but he still didn't win, so yeah. In his absence, Labour held a leadership contest. The result was that the party elected its very own swivel-eyed psychopath, a sort of pixie man called Tony Blair. As with the poll tax, ask your parents about him and measure their blood pressure to see what they think of him. Blair pushed for what was called the New Labour Project, a sort of shit rebrand that irrelevant boy bands try when times get desperate. It involved, seemingly, promising public spending that was sorely needed, but without raising taxes, which had been cut quite heavily since 1979.
Mr. Blair, I put it to you, if you were Prime Minister, if, that is, if you were Prime Minister, what would you do?
Under a Labour government, of course, we would spend more on education, on the health service, on roads, and we will charge less tax. And that is what the Labour Party is all about.
A nice vision, but how will you pay for it?
Well, it'll be a happier society where pensioners are paid more, benefits are higher, and we shall be shiny, happy people holding hands.
The literal foundation of the Labour Party's ideology, Clause 4, was gutted. Ties with the unions were severed. There was to be no wealth tax, no state interference, and no silly, loony pushing of collective bargaining rights. Just happy-clappy Britpop and Tony's unsettling grin. 1997 was Labour's biggest ever landslide, not the least because of how sleazy, rotten, and incompetent the Tories looked at the time. Not even the usually coddling press liked them anymore. Blair's government was actually a two-man show, with Tony being the psycho liar and the walking sack of sad that was Gordon Brown doing all the boring but essential money shit. He was nicknamed Prudence during Blair's first term for not employing the so-called tax and spend model of economics that Labour had fallen on since 1945. Public services investment was saved up for 2001 and beyond. 2001? What happened then? Oh yeah. 9/11 kicked off the War on Terror, something that pretty much everyone was keen on. None were more enthused than the Yanks, who loved to get involved in stupid wars which they then tried to drag us into. First there was Korea in the 50s, then Vietnam in the 60s, then Kuwait in the 90s, and now Iraq. During Vietnam, the then Labour Prime Minister Harold Wilson absolutely refused to get British troops on the ground due to the sheer unpopularity of the conflict among the public. Blair was not a Wilson. Blair was a little lapdog. George W. Bush's lapdog to be precise. And he followed dubya into Iraq without question. Like a little shit. Worst of all, the British did not approve of the war, with there being anti-war protests numbering in the hundreds of thousands of members, and Blair, being the man of the people that he was, ignored them. This war was a parasite that slowly ate away at the moral credibility that Labour had always tried to hold above all else, and it showed. The youth voting bloc that had usually stuck with them gradually built up their disgust for the war and evaporated, which was becoming increasingly suspicious in its original aims and justifications. Though Blair enjoyed 3 pretty good election victories, the war had tarnished Labour's image and still affects them to this day. By 2010, Labour's economic credibility had also died. The 2008 financial crash was successfully blamed on them, despite originating from a load of bankers in America and not a sad Scottish man with one eye. Where before Labour had suitably criticised the Americans, war, privatisation, now they seemed willing to roll with it so long as it gave them votes. In the end, in my opinion, the tabloid press won their war against any semblance of old Labour, and this can clearly be seen today. Starmer's Labour is as weak and compliant with private utilities and billionaires than ever before, and I highly doubt Labour's founders would even recognise the party as it stands today. Their moral wishy-washiness since Iraq, which now manifests in their rhetoric and inaction regarding the situation in Gaza, both in economics and social policy, has distorted the distinctiveness between Tory and Labour. In the current climate, Labour can't even say the words working class anymore, which makes me reckon that maybe they've forgotten what the name of their own organisation means. I've always thought that distinction between political parties is key to a functioning democracy. When major parties work within similar, if not the same economic framework and rhetoric as ours have for the most part since 1997, very dangerous times may follow. As it stands, the UK electorate feels a sense of despair and sometimes anger that both establishment parties seem to be the same these days. Old Labour may have become unelectable, but at the very least the British people had a clear choice. Regardless, an apparent uni-party is arguably the worst possible outcome for democracy the world over, and if Starmer truly wants to be a symbol of quote-unquote real change, he must make his party unequivocally divorced from his opposition. Well, he's still here, which means I must have been doing something right. Cheers for sticking around till the end. This 2-part series has been a long time in the making, and frankly, I'm pretty proud of how much traction it's gained for my channel. Anyway, as usual, stick your opinions and criticisms in the comments, and I'll see you lot later. Alright? Ta-ra.